Hey everyone, it's Luffy Saw. I thought I'd go over and cover some in-game settings for Valorant and some AMD settings that I feel work the best, kind of giving them max FPS possible. We'll go over kind of those settings, so let's get straight into it. So the AMD Radeon settings for Valorant, obviously there's no kind of installed application yet for Valorant for AMD, because obviously it's still in beta phase. But if we go to global graphics, and we can see we've got it set to esports. I have tried previously disabling anti-lag and disabling image sharpening to see whether got a bit of a FPS change to that, and I didn't notice any differences at all. Obviously kind of going down the list, we can see turned off vertical refresh, because that kind of doesn't really help in that situation if you don't use those settings. So for me, I'll keep that off. Anti-Aliasing, use application settings, anti-aliasing method, multi-sampling, morphological anti-aliasing disabled, anisotropic filtering disabled. And obviously, key thing to remember to import to put on for your settings and AMD for the Adrenalin 2020 version is the texture filter quality set to performance. Surface format optimization. So to get a kind of a gain in FPS with this enabled, the same for the tessellation mode. So tessellation, disabling or enabling, it didn't really notice any difference, so just leave it as default. But yeah, you won't go wrong if you just set the esports setting. They'll kind of put everything into the correct settings to get the best FPS out of the game. Obviously, in terms of performance, there is an option for tuning where increasing the power tuning should be enabled to 50%. It's obviously making sure that your graphics card gets the full 100% power from the power supply to ensure that there's no kind of distortion or lagging in that. Trying to think what else to cover. Obviously, make sure that your game is up in the latest version. Then currently we're still on the latest version, which is 20.4.2. Right, so if we go into Valorant, just a key thing to take note of too with the aspect ratios. I've noticed there being no difference really. So I know with CSGO, if you kind of use a 4x3 format, you kind of get wider models, but in Valorant you don't get that at all. So lowering your resolution to, or doing a custom resolution like 1280 by 960, you see no real difference. The only things you would really see change would be the kind of the utilities at the bottom would be a bit wider, but no real difference. Right, to get to the settings, you can obviously click on the settings. General, I'll kind of go over these. The enemy highlight color. So this is kind of an important aspect if you need to see the different enemies have a different glow to them. So if you select the red, they'll have a red glow. Purple, yellow, they'll have obviously a purple and a yellow glow. So whichever is easier for you to spot is a good option. I like red because it stands out more. My sensitivity is at 0.7. So this is based on a formula where you got to, CSGO for example, your sensitivity that you use, you got to divide it by 3.18 to get your Valorant aim. But I find that's kind of off a bit. It doesn't seem to be as on point as it should be. So I've had to play around with my sensitivity in Valorant, and I find it more comfortable than 0.7. Scope sensitivity 1, invert mouse and cycle displays all off. My minimap I prefer to have rotate. Obviously with a fixed orientation, it seems to not be enabled for that option. Can't click it. Keep player centered, yes. Minimap size I don't change any of this, is all default. Show the map region names always, so you can see the names of the maps, especially if you're new to the game. You need to call out the different areas that are on there. Things I have is show corpses off, show mature content. I keep turning that off, but it keeps coming back on for some reason, so I'm guessing that's a bug. Explicit language filter you can have on, so they bleep out any swear words that your teammates type or opponents type in message. Turn off blood. Instability indicators are off. Network buffering is the new one, so obviously you can have a minimum to moderate. What's the kind of thing on here? So I'm guessing they reduce the load on your bandwidth by setting it depending on how much packet loss you get. Show bullet traces I got off. A lot of these I got off. The reason behind that is to get most FPS possible. So the less happening in the background, the less rendering, and the less kind of fancy graphics on the screen, going to give you a slight edge with a bit more FPS on them. Controls, I've got all the controls set as default, obviously where the same as my CSGO. Crosshair I kind of got set to a dot. I find this works best for me, especially if you need to aim, because the model heads are quite small. So if you can go through, you can customize your entire crosshair thing here. See, it doesn't seem to be like an import option to import other players' crosshairs like it is for CSGO at the moment. However, you've got quite a list of different colors to choose from, which is nice. Quite a few settings to change it. My video settings, I've got my default for my monitor. Obviously, if you change these lower down to like 1280 by 960, for example, you kind of get no difference. There's no difference in FPS. Letterbox or fill, it's your preference. You've got options to limit FPS and battery, that's off. Limit FPS and menus, off. Limit FPS and background, off. But you have a limit FPS always, so this is kind of like a global FPS thing. So I've set it to 128. And the reason I got to 128 is an old myth from CS 1.6 where you times your refresh rate by 2 plus 1. Especially like with 128 tick servers. I mean, more than 128 frames on a 128 tick server apparently back then didn't make any difference. So, but in my mindset, I cut it set to that. Still, I'm more comfortable with it. Graphics quality, everything's on low and off. Everything's on the lowest I can possibly get it to kind of get that stable frame rate. Stats, so you can show your client FPS and text graph. Server tick rates, total frame time, CPU frame time, GPU frame time. Network round trip time you can show. Packet loss too, you can show all that. So it's important to kind of get the understanding of what you want to see, and the only ones I really show is the network round trip, so that's your ping, packet loss, if there's any packet loss in your network, which is important to see too. But there seems to be a bug that shows random spikes of packet loss. Sometimes you'll be playing and it's 100% packet loss, which I don't think is accurate. Client FPS is enabled. Audio, got all the audio standard settings. Voice chat, you can set obviously push to talk or automatic. That's up to you how you want to display these settings. You can choose your default devices. They always seem to default to the system device, so you can't set it that it doesn't change when you change it. Voiceover, yeah, it can be a bit annoying if you don't take off these settings, because you'll get in a heated gun battle and all of a sudden you've got an announcer in the background shouting out something. So I try and turn those off. So announcer I'll leave on because it obviously says like round start and round end, or clutch and things like that, which is quite nice. And then gameplay announcements. But agent flavor and tactical callouts would be quite kind of interfering with your gameplay. Any other settings I can think of? I can't think of anything at the moment, but maybe I'll cover some more stuff in later videos. But for now, if we look at the practice, if we can go to the shooting range. Called Brimstone. So you can see at the top left hand corner, you can see your client FPS is set to, for myself, as 128. I seem to be very stable with it. It doesn't jump around too much unless I use, for example, the recording software I'm using at the moment does cause a bit of a FPS spike, so that doesn't help a lot in game. The network round trip, you can see, is around 60 milliseconds. Obviously I'm based in England, so there aren't any servers that are close by. Apparently they're looking at opening a server in London. which I'm hoping it does. Then I can get about 20 milliseconds. Packet loss, you can see a spiking. That's the kind of thing that happens a lot. That may be the reason for the peakers advantage and stuff like that, but obviously that's all covered. And the developers kind of release notes and kind of their videos that they're posting about fixes and stuff that are coming up. So 128, you can still kind of get your bunny hops going. There's no difference with anything else that can be felt. It feels smooth as if I was running on 300, so I don't notice anything more. So if you want to limit your FPS, maybe a good idea to do that. Yeah, so kind of that's the settings that I found to work the best. If you guys have any other settings that you could recommend to help out other players that are going to be getting Valorant on the 2nd of June on lower end systems. Obviously my current system I'm using is a Ryzen 3 3200G. I've got 16 gigs of DDR4, 2400 megahertz RAM. I've got a 250 gig SSD, and my graphics card's an R9 390, obviously an AMD. With that I get really good FPS on CSGO, so I can't complain about that. But with Valorant there definitely seems to be an issue with FPS on slightly older, higher end cards. So I don't know whether that's just a optimization thing that they need to change. Now and again you'll notice a few glitches and stuff like that, but they could just be obviously FPS related. Right, so I think that is pretty much everything in terms of settings that I could talk about. Obviously there are a few people that have said that turning the game mode off helps, but I haven't noticed anything. So my game mode's on. I don't see any difference besides obviously getting interruptions and stuff like that. So every now and again my keyboard does not function. I don't know what that's from. It could be the Vanguard anti-cheat system blocking the keyboard, so I don't know what that is, or it could just be an anti-ghosting feature. Cool, so I hope you guys liked the video. Please subscribe and please like, and hopefully you guys get some extra FPS from this.